So good afternoon, everyone. For some of you, it's welcome back. For others, it may be you've just tuned in to our afternoon session, but welcome to the 2024 Juneteenth virtual conference. Our theme this year is "And Also Loves Women, Purple, Pride, and the Pulpit." This morning, we had a really powerful session to kick us off, to kick off our discussion. Our moderator was Reverend Melissa McQueen Simmons, and our keynote speaker was the Reverend Canon Mufo Tutu Von Firth. And they really set the tone talking about womanist theory, womanist theology, the practical purposes of how we view womanism in the US and how it's viewed in the diaspora. And it was just a really soul-stirring conversation. And so now we're ready for part two. Part two, we have a panel of experts who will continue the conversation under our theme, "And Also Women, and Also Loves Women." And they will tackle the question, how did we get here? Black faith stations on the Rainbow Railroad to Freedom. And so I will begin with introducing our moderator. She is no stranger to Covenant. She is no stranger to being out on the front lines, no stranger to speaking her truth. And we are excited and delighted to have her moderate our session, and she will introduce the panelists. So we have Reverend Andrea Alexander Esquire. And I will read her bio. It is also in our booklet, but I will read her bio. She is a social justice advocate, an activist, and a consultant. As the former Associate General Secretary for Action and Advocacy for Justice and Peace with the National Council of Churches, she led the organization in all of its domestic public policy initiatives, including mass incarceration, policing, voting rights, and reparation for people of African descent. She facilitated and led the organization's Truth and Racial Equity Campaign, ACT or ACT, Now to End Racism. She has preached, lectured, and facilitated workshops throughout the United States and around the world, including Egypt, South Africa, Turkey, Mexico, and South Korea. She also has helped facilitate delegation trips to Israel-Palestine with the NCC partners. Reverend Alexander is the founder and principal of Redemption Song Unlimited, LLC, working with organizations, governmental entities, and corporations on creating and implementing policies, procedures, and practices with a racial equity lens. She is an ordained minister with the American Baptist Churches and also a lawyer. Reverend Alexander received both her JD and her BS in accountancy from the University of Missouri in Columbia, and also has an MDiv from Princeton Theological Seminary in New Jersey. We are super, super excited that she is here, and we do not take it for granted. And we're excited about this panel as you tackle this question so that we will know, how are we to move forward? Because you can't move forward if you don't understand how you got here. So we want to start off with how you got here and then moving forward. So with that, Reverend Alexandra, take it away.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aparicio. It's funny because most of the time when people introduce you, it's like, oh, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Well, it's my bio. I wrote most of it. But it is my history. But I'm always excited about any work in which we have an opportunity to engage justice and making the world welcome to all for all, and bringing about the greater reflection of God's heaven on earth as God, the kingdom on earth as God has it in heaven. And that is our goal and hope in our everyday ministry at Covenant. I want to welcome back those who were with us this morning, and welcome anew those who were not, and encourage you, please, please, please watch the video on YouTube or Facebook, our Facebook page, because it was a great conversation this morning, and we're hoping to continue in that vein this afternoon. So as it was mentioned, that our goal this afternoon is to look at what we've done for the entire conference is the intersection of where Black liberation, faith, women, and pride meet. And as our esteemed leader of ChristAfrica Theological Institute, the Reverend Dr. Lakeisha Harrison said in her letter, and I also encourage you to please read the booklet. We tend to think, oh, you saw it and you didn't. We got great stuff in that booklet, and it's really pretty too. But she mentions, and I agree, that we will hear from outrageous, audacious, courageous women of African descent from different places and spaces who refuse to silence their voices, quiet their faith, or hide their love. Here at Covenant, and also pulling from the letter from our pastor, we have a beautiful legacy. And two of those, our major issues will be a focus and intersection of that legacy here today. And that's the liberation of the liberation of women and LGBTQI plus community, cultivating safe, brave space for all of God's children to be all of who they are. Covenant is a unique space and place in which we are the first Black Baptist church in the DMV to license, to preach, and then ordain women to the gospel ministry. And we're also the first Black Baptist church in the area to call a husband-wife team of pastors. We're also the first Black Baptist church to become what is known in our community as open and affirming, which should be all churches, because that's what the mandate of Jesus is that we are open to all of God's, everyone who is created in the image of God. Covenant started working on this reflection regarding our understanding and better embracing and creating that safe space for our LGBTQI community during the AIDS epidemic of the 1980s. Fortunately, we've seen a lot more movement since then, but we have such a long way to go. So we're going to open this afternoon with two dynamic panelists, Reverend Lisa Dunson and Miss Kendra Frith. Frith, I do want to mispronounce your name, Miss Frith. And I'm going to read both bios, and then I'm going to ask Reverend Dunson to open us with her statement, kind of giving us a backdrop, as we said, how we got here, looking at the church in a larger sense, but like I mentioned a little bit about what Covenant has been through. And then we'll have Ms. Frith talk about the work that is happening with a partner organization that we are working with, Rainbow Railroad. So Reverend Dunson, again, you read bios and it's really great, but she's just a cool person. And she's my friend. Reverend Dunson is a native of Lexington, Kentucky. She attended Eastern Kentucky University in Richmond, Kentucky, and received her Master's of Divinity from the Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology in Richmond. Reverend Dunson is the president of the Alliance of Baptists Board of Directors, co-chair of the UCC African American Women in Ministry, Global Engagement Committee. She serves on the UCC Executive Committee for the Women in Ministries Potomac Association Sister Circle, and is the liaison for the United Congregational Churches of Southern Africa's Women at the Well Ministry. She was ordained at Covenant. She's a daughter of Covenant, as we would say, in November 2012, where she has served as Minister of Christian Ed, Senior Associate Minister, Pastoral Liaison to the Wesley Theological Innovation Hub, and, as we say, a host of other ministries. Reverend Lisa believes part of her calling is to speak life, light, and truth into the dark places we often find ourselves. She embraces this and is thankful for, she embraces and is thankful for all of the challenges she has faced, and offers her life as a testimony to the goodness, the grace, the mercy, and loving forgiveness of the one God who loved all of us unconditionally. She loves God and all of God's people, and she loves that there is room at kingdom tables for all of God's children, regardless of the isms, phobias, and prejudices that so easily separate, divide, and harm us. So we look forward to hearing from Reverend Dunson. And then we have with us Miss Kendra Frith. Ms. Frith was born and raised amidst the vibrant landscape of Mandeville, Jamaica. Kendra's journey unfolds a profound commitment to human rights. Armed with a Bachelor's of Science degree in guidance and counseling, her roots in psychology have fueled her passion for making a difference. For over a decade, and she doesn't look like she could be old enough to have done all this, Kendra's been an unwavering human rights defender, dedicating herself to the empowerment of the LGBTQI plus people affected by homelessness and forced displacement. Kendra's dedication shines through her community mobilization skills and her ability to utilize policy and advocacy as catalysts for tangible social change. Having overcome her own challenges with the support of Rainbow Railroad, Kendra now calls Virginia her home in the United States. As a dynamic community organizer, she is thrilled to contribute to the organization that transformed her life. In her capacity as Senior Engagement Officer, Kendra leads the planning and implementation of the U.S. State Department's Welcome Corps program to resettle refugees in the U.S. and supports Rainbow Railroad's U.S. expansion efforts and refugee leadership initiative. Behind the scenes, Kendra wields a secret superpower: logistics management. With finesse, she orchestrates the intricate dance of details, ensuring the seamless execution of initiatives and leave a lasting impact. As Kendra's story continues to evolve, so does her commitment to creating a world where everyone can live authentically and without fear. And when she has a chance to speak, we're gonna have to ask her, because Kendra is a Potterhead whose house is in Gryffindor. As you know, I'm not very familiar with Harry Potter, and it took me a couple of times to even understand the reference, but you're gonna share that with us. I will now turn it over to Reverend Lisa Dunson. Please start us off. I'm gonna say this because Reverend Dunson may not. When we say people like really pulled themselves from their sick bed, that's what she has done. She's been ill for a while, but she was so committed to doing this and wanting to do it. I actually told her to be quiet and just drink water and stay in bed, and do what she can for us. So if she has to go dark, as we say on the screen, just give her grace. And we're thanking God that she was able to make it. At least right now, we could see her face in her beautiful purple shirt.
Thank you, Reverend Alexander. I've been dealing with this cough. Seemed to want to show up on the panel with me today. But this is such an important conversation. It is a conversation that has the ability to give life to so many people who find that they are in a dark space. Sadly, in my opinion, the church has been the perpetrator of a lot of the hurt that the LGBTQ community has faced, both the Black church and the white church. And the church likes to pride itself on being a safe space.
Mhm.
And there are churches that have, as you have mentioned, have become open and affirming. It's different from welcoming, because you can welcome anybody, but are you affirming who we are in our authentic selves as we have been created by God in God's image? One of the things I kind of want to do is just lay a little groundwork, just real quick and very briefly, while I have a respite from my coughing. There are two schools of thought when it comes to the Bible and homosexuality. There is a lot of the beat downs that we get from the Bible relate to homosexuality. And homosexuality refers to the romantic and sexual attraction between members of the same sex. It encompasses their identity, their relationships, and the societal roles that they live in. There's a somewhat new school of thought called homogenitality. And that relates to well, first of all, that's the term that's primarily used in the theological realm today, and it focuses on the moral issues of same genital contact, which is different from same gender attraction. Historically and biblically, homosexuality didn't even exist in biblical times. It appeared in around, I believe, around the 19th century is when it really, which was 1800s, and that's not that long ago. There was nobody writing the Bible in 1800, 1800s. So as we interpret the Bible, we can interpret the Bible literally, or we can look at it in its historical context with a more critical eye. Reading the Bible literally, there is, depending on who you are, how you show up in the world, you could be in a host of different situations. You, Kendra, and I, we could be somebody's harem, living in a tent somewhere. Who knows who would be the first wife? You know, there are just so many things that fall into how that community lived that is not how we live today. One of the things I like to do with the Bible is try to take it out of its, well, looking at it in its historical context, try to apply how it is that it relates to us today in our living. Folks who take the Bible literally don't do that. So the text in Romans, the text in Leviticus that they continually use to denounce same-gender relationships. We can take what, who was it? I wrote it down this morning, what Bishop said is that every text has the ability to be a liberating text. And I love that, because if you take the Bible and look at it with a critical eye, there is liberation throughout the Bible. There is love throughout the Bible. There is acceptance throughout the Bible. There is justice throughout the Bible. Jesus never talks about same-sex relationships. There's no mention of it in the Bible, no matter how you look at it. And so the church has got to be has got to evolve to a place where we're able to look at the Bible with a much more critical eye. And if we really want to do as Jesus did, then we would welcome everyone in their full authenticity, just as God made us, without any of the isms and phobias that are so often imparted to us. So I'm not sure if I answered your question. I feel like I went off on a little mini sermon, but I'm going to stop right here.
No, I think that's a good opening for us. I also, before we bring on Kendra, as we're talking, I want to let our audience know. I mean, we have our goals, and everyone listens will have theirs. But I will keep asking as we keep in mind, and when people are asking questions, it is our hope to help bring an awareness and educate for some, a broader awareness for some, and educate others about how society, and as you mentioned, Reverend Dunson, the church's impact on the persecution of our queer brothers and sisters and non-binary siblings. The church's impact on that, and understanding again our role in correcting it and being the place where there can be a safe space. And also the whole idea, which we're going to now ask Kendra to talk about, it wasn't so much new to me, but the idea, I understand people having to relocate and what it takes to live your life, but to see a ministry and work program that's actually working on queer refugee issues. When we think refugees, of course, we look, especially now watching the news around migration and immigration issues, asylum seekers, refugees, and those are kind of legal terms in some ways, but refugees, and particularly as African people of African descent in the United States and even around the world, we've migrated places in order to be safe, and to find better opportunities. But first and foremost, mostly it was to be safe in order to be able to be able to walk and live and be in your own skin. And so, Kendra, will you talk to us a little bit about the work that you guys are doing, and it can help us understand this whole idea of what in the Rainbow Railroad identifies as queer refugees, and the work that you guys are doing around transformation, the role of transformative communities of care.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you for having me. Rainbow Railroad is a global organization dedicated to helping LGBTQI plus individuals escape violence and persecution in countries where their lives are at risk because of their sexual orientation and gender identity. In many parts of the world, being lesbian, bisexual, transgender, gay, especially now we're focusing on women, we face significant challenges and persecution, often exacerbated by religious institutions and communities. We provide a critical support as an organization, such as emergency travel, legal assistance, and resettlement services to ensure the safety and well-being of those we help. I can talk about my own personal story, being a lesbian woman growing up in Jamaica. For the first 13 years of my life, I religiously went to church every Sunday with my grandparents and my parents. And the moment I started realizing who I was, that relationship with the church and with God changed. And being threatened and using the Bible as a weapon deterred me from that relationship. And that has been happening to many individuals around the world to date. There are over 110 million people displaced worldwide, and we don't have the ideal number as to how many of those people are LGBTQI+, but the guess at this moment in time is that there are upwards of 10 million LGBTQI+ individuals that are displaced. And many of the requests for help that we do get include some form of conversion or Christ-like therapy, which is what is being mentioned as to why these individuals are requesting help. And we have a key mission with the Welcome Core program here, and we have a community of care initiative that we're mobilizing local communities and individuals to sponsor and help LGBTQI plus refugees and asylum seekers like myself to get to a new and safer environment. We're trying to create networks that offer essential resources and a sense of belonging, empowerment for LGBTQI plus individuals. It was 8 years ago that I made that journey from Jamaica to here to the US. And to date, I still have a rocky relationship with God. I feel like for the beginning of my life, I was built on that foundation of praying and talking to God and reading my Bible. And because that was used as a weapon and being told that he no longer loves me because this is who I am, that fuels the job that I do now, because I'm trying to get back to that place of knowing that those words aren't true. So with the work that we're doing, we're trying to help individuals get to safer spaces and also get to be a part of a community, because many of us that are part of the LGBTQI plus community had those negative reactions within the church as a LGBTQI plus woman. And many of us just are trying to get back to that space because of the damage that that has created. So here we are.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing your story. I had a book years ago, and I don't remember, actually, I don't remember how much of the book I read, but the title spoke very loudly. And the title was How to Be a Christian Without Embarrassing God. And, you know, I think that says that says a lot about the way the faith community has engaged in that kind of way of in both as Reverend Dunson spoke about the misuse of biblical text to bring about people's own prejudices and misunderstandings and isms, from everything for as women, people of color, as well as your sexual orientation. So I would like to ask, you can drive, I see that you're with the State Department. And wanted to ask you, like, so I used to work with the American Baptist Home Mission Society, and at one point, one of my ministry portfolios was refugee resettlement and immigration issues. Could you tell us how what we did at that time with faith communities, and that the State Department's refugee program was initiated and grew out of World War II, when all of these people were coming from Europe primarily, when they came fleeing and seeking refuge because they were oppressed and persecuted because of being of their own particular faith community or ethnic group or whatever, and now have become part of mainstream America, and then join in persecuting others, which happens often. But what the mainline denominations had a partnership with the State Department through church world service primarily, and then there were some faith communities like Catholic Charities and a few others, and all had their separate partnership. And what our role was as churches in those denominations, each had like a desk that partnered congregations with refugee communities coming from other parts of the world. And there were certain rules that we had to follow. There was no proselytizing allowed. Your responsibility was to help get people resettled. And it was really good work, and it went on for some time and still does, but just not as broad. Could you tell me how you engage with the State Department in its partnership with Rainbow Railroad, and then how congregations or other communities could partner with you guys.
Perfect. Thank you. So when the State Department decided that they would create this program to welcome refugees, LGBTQI plus individuals weren't a part of the program. Because of the work that we were doing in Canada and the partnership that we have with the Canadian government, we decided, hey, we would like to have a foot in the game. Allow us to be the organization that works particularly with the LGBTQI plus community. So we created that partnership, and we're the only organization that's supporting LGBTQI plus refugees through this process. With that being said, we now had to get some skin in the game because there are LGBTQI plus refugees around the world. However, because it's illegal in 65 countries to even identify as LGBTQI plus, we were having a hard time finding these refugees because they couldn't put on their refugee paperwork, I'm gay, I'm a lesbian, I'm a transgender person. It had to be through conversations or anything, through a caseworker overseas, that they would mention it and that they would be able to flag that somewhere in the system so that we would be able to be matched with them. It took a while for us to even begin getting persons through the system, but through advocacy and having lots of conversations, where we've relocated so far 13 persons, 6 people so far in DC. And what we've been doing was creating partnerships with other organizations. We have a great partnership with the St. Thomas Episcopal Church in Washington, D.C., and they have agreed to help support us with creating what we call communities of care, which are groups of 5 or more individuals, U.S. citizens or green card holders here in the U.S., to be the community that welcomes these refugees once they get here to the U.S. The church provides a network of translators because the church itself has a lot of asylum seekers that were bused to DC that are Spanish speakers. So they help with translation services. They're very open and welcoming to the community. What we found was, even though the church is creating these groups, the refugees, once they arrived, it was mind-boggling, I want to say, because they're coming from countries where they're turned away from church. So now here they are, they're here in the US, and it's a church that created a group to welcome them and are giving them resources. And now they want to come back into church. And we've seen that happen. Just this past weekend, I was in DC, and we were all the refugees and myself were in church to celebrate Pride. So we are creating communities of care. We want more churches and organizations to come together, because right now we have no African American organizations or churches even coming together to help support the work. And we know that there are many African Americans, African individuals, refugees, Caribbean descent refugees that need the assistance. And for me, when I came here as an asylum seeker, if this program was around, I would have been a bit more comfortable if someone like me would have welcomed me, you know? So we're trying to get partnerships with other organizations to welcome as many queer newcomers to the US as possible, because many of us are losing our lives just because of who we love and how we identify.
Yeah, that's interesting, because as you were speaking, again, the refugee and asylum definitions are very unique and legal.
Yes.
And in many cases, that means the LGBTQI community actually can be both refugee and asylum seekers. Because
Yes.
there are others may be refugees because of famine and all the kinds of things that the push me, pull me that impacts the refugee plight. But you have people whose lives are actually in danger, but it's not considered a national crisis. that would readily acknowledge that there are asylum seekers coming from these areas.
I agree. And this is something that we talk about within the organization. We're able to provide emergency transport services, but when I tell you that these persons will make it to the US or Canadian border by the hook or the crook, even if it takes a little bit longer for us to be able to help them, they're going to make this journey because their lives depend on it. What we're trying to do as an organization is to try to do it as safely as possible. Because again, they're vulnerable persons. In some instances, you are a refugee because of a crime or a crisis that's happening in your country. What's happening with many of these individuals is they're identifying as women, one, they're a part of the LGBTQI plus community, two, and there's also a crisis in their community. So it's a three-factor situation that causes them to be a refugee or an asylum seeker. Whereas in some persons, it's just one situation or two. Another aspect of it too is many LGBTQI plus individuals are traveling on their own. They're not traveling with their families or with their partners because that would be more dangerous for them. So.
And it's dangerous in those kinds of how people are making it. And I'm thinking, particularly if you're coming through Caribbean or something like others, they may come through cross borders or boats or whatever it might be. Even trying to work with those who are the coyotes, as they call them, could be dangerous because, again, women are in danger. They're often subjected to being raped and mistreated to start off with, but then also to have the additional layer of being identified as queer could make your life even more in danger. Thank you so much. You have any ideas or questions or comments, additional comments, Reverend Dunson? I actually would like to hear your thoughts on being the president of the Alliance of Baptists. Ideas about how there could be a better connection and relationship with some of our faith communities, our Baptist churches, for instance, who are already places, safe and brave, liberating spaces for people who are here, and how they may be good opportunities for partnerships.
Sure. May I start with just a question for you, Kendra? In terms when you identify these people who are coming into the U.S., can you kind of lay out the path that they take? What happens? What happens to get them connected to someone? So you identify them, and what happens between the identification of that they need the help and the connection point? Am I asking that correctly?
Okay, so to answer your question, there are two. Through the Welcome Corps program, these individuals are identified by UNHCR and PRM. So they are that's
Kendra,
the entity.
I'm just going to ask you. I wanted to just put a pause in there. People don't know those two organizations you just mentioned, so you have to help us out.
Yeah,
and I apologize because I started out asking questions because I come from a particular position of knowledge. So break it down for us. Really break it down.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there is the refugee coalition that identifies refugees in different countries. Once they're identified, then they're put through a pipeline to be matched with private sponsor organizations through the Welcome Corps program to be relocated. Rainbow Railroad is one of those private sponsor organizations that they would now be connected to. Our job through Welcome Corps is once we have a group of persons that have submitted an application to welcome an individual, then they are matched with this individual and travel is scheduled and we get the arrival date, July 1st, they'll arrive at DCA airport at 12:59. We do not know how they look. All we know is their name and their age. So we can make a sign to say, welcome to the United States, Oscar, right? And they arrive, and for their first 90 days of being here in the country, we are teaching them how to take the metro. We're getting them connected with jobs, getting permanent housing. Anything you would need to do once you move to somewhere new, that's what we're helping them to do. That's option one. Option two, once a person goes onto the Rainbow Railroad website and they apply for help, we do intake and one, verify their case, ensure that it's valid. Because again, with everything you do, there are fraudulent cases that could pop up. We now ensure that this is actually a factual case and this person doesn't need or help. Once that happens, then we decide, or in a conversation together, do you want to leave the country? One, do you think that it would be safer to go to a different community within the same country? Because again, that can happen. Or do you need additional support? Whereas if you are HIV positive and you have no access to medication, you need funds to be able to get those medications. Then there's that. In the event that they decide they want to leave the country, then do you have a passport? If you don't have a passport, then we need to get you a passport. Do you need a visa? We would do visa applications. In the event that you're unable to do that, then a conversation is had with the emergency transport team, and they would now plot how exactly you would get to safety. I myself can't speak to what routes persons would take, but outside of Rainbow Railroad, I know of persons that have fled Jamaica to come here to the US and had to go through 6 or 7 different countries before even making it to the Mexican-US border to get here. So again, it just depends on where you're located. It can take a month to get here. It could take a few days. It could take a year. We've had situations with individuals that we have relocated that it's taken months for them to get from a country in Africa to here to the United States because of all the countries that they had to go through, being turned away, transit visas, no visas, and having to walk beneath a fence or getting cut. So it depends on where they are. But not many persons are lucky like myself, I like to say. I had a US visa, so I was able to buy a ticket to come here to the US. And ideally, the idea wasn't for me to stay here in the US. It's just that the situation back in Jamaica got worse. And my mother said to me, Kendra, do not come back. I don't want to have to bury you. So stay. So I stayed. Not many persons are as lucky as myself. I've lost friends. So it depends on where they are and what they want to do.
Thank you, thank you. And that helps. Reverend Alexander, the question, the answer to your question, I think the first is education, knowing that the Rainbow Railroad exists and the mission that they have, and making that. This was the first time I had heard of this organization, and I'm grateful that you exist, because it really sheds light on how dire the situation is for so many that we probably have never really thought about. So I think educating the churches is the first thing that would need to happen. The other thing I want to go back to, and I think is important, is what you said, Kendra, earlier about having folks who look like you to welcome you. The Black church, as much as I love it, we can be a little difficult, a little hard on our folks, on the LGBTQ community. And being able to find a safe space where there are folk who look like you is important. One of the challenges that I have with the Alliance of Baptists is bringing in Black churches, because their Covenant is the only African-American Baptist church in the Alliance of Baptists. And so I am forever saying, come on, let's go, because we need to see people who look like us in these spaces. So being able to have someone who you can relate to culturally is really, I think, primary. So I think that's where I would probably leave it, because though that's a pretty big jump for the Alliance in and of itself. I think there are enough networks of Black churches and Black pastors where if the conversation were to get started, then the telling of the Rainbow Railroad and what the mission is, like I said earlier, that would really, I think, go a long way in helping to perhaps secure some more Black churches, especially in the DC area, that would be able to be a refuge for those you bring over.
Ken, do you have any comment to that? I agree, Lisa, that I think that as I've been listening, because these partnerships, I mean, we're looking at like partners, sponsors or whatever, as our congregations did with the church world service, those who were part of that coalition. Of course, the entire church body, there's a whole group that engages in that way. So that would make a real big difference. And so I think that that would be one thing, how to get, because the bodies of congregations that would be interested, but if they're not engaged at this high level, it just may it may include just kind of broadening or elevating the awareness of the organization, because this is all, and and when did Rainbow Railroad get this relationship with the State Department? How long ago has that been?
So the relationship with the State Department through Welcome Corps is a year old. But we have been in the US since 2015. We've been around since 2006 internationally. And to comment as it relates to African American churches in DC, we've had initial conversations with some, but again, it goes back to how we are as a people. And even though we are preaching love, it's conditional in some cases, which it shouldn't be the case. So yes, we'll support the LGBTQI plus community. We'll donate, but in terms of putting in resources, that's some of the pushback that we do get sometimes.
Okay. We have a question in the Q&A, and you answered it, but I'm going to read it out loud so the larger community could hear. Dr. Redora Stewart, who's an associate minister with Covenant, asks, as she says, the process you described for a refugee to get to the US or Canada is arduous indeed. Would applying as a student provide an easier access to get here and then connect with the Rainbow Railroad?
So like I said in the answer, yes, it would. However, many persons requesting help don't have the finances to even apply for student visas. What we found too is many of these individuals that are applying have been kicked out of school because they don't have any financial support. Their family has kicked them out. Many of them are homeless. They're no longer in the countries that they are born in, but in other countries. And two, what you don't want to do is lie to the US government when submitting applications, because it can come and bite you in the end. So we do see that some individuals do apply for student visas and some are able to receive them, but once they get here to the US and are going through immigration, not many people can go through the questioning without faltering and saying, hey, I'm actually here to seek asylum, and they can get turned away. So, yeah.
And also I would imagine that the age and stations that people are in their life are varied, but that being a particular category. Another thing I learned today when you mentioned that the process is before even this category was that people were not allowed to participate or were intentionally excluded under the earlier programming resettlement process. So that is new to me as well. So in order to even be included, then people had to, if they were going to try to be a part of the refugee programming, even in a country dealing with conflict or strife or whatever, they had to either lie or perpetrate and somehow to be even included when their lives were still in danger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the case. I've met many refugees through doing this work that weren't relocated by Rainbow Railroad, but are now able to say, I am a part of the community. I just couldn't say it back in my country or back where I was, because if I did, there's a chance I would not even be here.
Right. Another question we have, Karen Devadira asks, are there other ways for the church to support the organization without sponsoring individual people?
Yes, donating to us. Even if you're not sponsoring, we have individuals that need to learn English, that want cultural socialization. Also being a friend. Many of these individuals are coming here and they have no one. They arrive here and they're met by 5 strangers, and it's hard sometimes to even get to know the individuals that are welcoming you. But if you learn their hobbies and you're able to point them in other directions to other entities, by all means, sure, we'd love and appreciate that. I feel like a church has a lot more to offer than just the Bible and God and somewhere to worship. I feel like there are many individuals that can give a mom hug or a dad hug. And sometimes it's as simple as that, providing a service or opening your heart to someone.
Right. And in the sponsorships, if I understand the way some of these are, you just said something I thought was interesting. There was the program at church, my mom's church, where they said that when they try to, in that case, they were partnering people who were recently released from prison with congregations. And the host talked about there were, the churches offered various things. There were some who had a lot of money and some had a lot of love. And sometimes a lot of love church partnered with the church with some money, and they could provide more resources for those individuals. We have another question from Dr. Stewart again. Would seminaries and schools of theology viable partners with, would seminaries and schools of theology be viable partners with Rainbow Railroad? Some have full tuition programs on the master level for international students.
Yes, by all means, I think they would. I feel like this is something that you can partner with us if we're able to find persons in or thousands of requests for help, that this could be a pathway for them to be able to get to safety, then by all means.
Yes. Oh, they're coming. Let me see if there's another question. I was gonna say they're coming kind of quickly. Oh, maybe that was it. Okay. How is trauma addressed by individuals using the railroad?
So we have partnerships with organizations and pro bono individuals that provide trauma-based training to individuals that are going to assist in relocating persons, and also to refugees and asylum seekers once they get here to the US or to Canada. We have organizations, Catholic Charities, Whitman Walker, and other private individuals that do offer services for trauma, because many individuals have some form of trauma, and what we're trying to do is not have them re-traumatized by this entire process of being relocated to a new country. So that's a primary focus of the entire process of getting persons here to the US. And we ensure that individuals that are creating these communities of care do go through trauma-informed training, especially for it's LGBTQI plus specific trauma-informed trainings.
And I know we're asking you a lot of questions that probably would also have been answered by Latoya.
That's fine.
Okay, because I wanted people to, as far as the engagement, I wanted to also ask about the how does Rainbow Railroad equip those who are the welcoming community? Because that takes some training and engagement as well.
Yes, so there is a 4-hour community essentials training that's done with each individual that is a part of a sponsorship group. It can either be done by one individual or the entire group. We recommend everyone do the training, but for the application process, at least one person has to complete the training. And the training goes through what the journey has been like for a refugee and asylum seeker to get here. One, what are the things to look for in the event that you might suspect that there is some mental health issue going on that's not outwardly there, but you might get a little hint or something. It's also about not having the refugee be too dependent on you, because we're trying to ensure that refugee and asylum seekers are independent once they get here. And we want to build them. So we're giving them a strong foundation so that they can be successful once they're here in the US. And then additionally to the community essentials training, we also do gender and sexuality training as an organization with persons that are creating these communities of care. So it's not just persons that are part of the community, but also allies that may not know gender pronouns or may not know exactly how an individual might identify on the gender spectrum. We do basic gender and sexuality training for that as well. And again, trauma-informed training for individuals that are interested. And not just for persons that we do offer these trainings to anyone who would want to learn more about the LGBTQI plus population.
Reverend Alexander, can I ask a quick question to kind
Sure.
of follow up on that? Is there a vetting process for the churches and or individuals who want to be a part of this beyond the training or
Yes.
prior to the training?
So each individual that wants to form or want to become a part of a community of care goes through a background check. It's completed by Sterling. And once you pass that background check, which goes through the State Department, then they say, okay, yes, this individual qualifies. We can now go through the next step.
Okay. And so for a church, what would that look like? Is that the same? Is it so would it be just that one, like for instance, would it be just one individual that would need to go through that process, or would it be
every person that wants to sponsor or wants to be a part of a group? So if your group has 8 people, all 8 individuals have to submit a background check.
Does do you all work with I guess migration type redisplacement as well? Like if people have to want to leave some really bad state within the US and want to relocate somewhere where they might be safer, or is this primarily this an international refugee immigration process?
So we do local relocation as well. Last year, I want to say the US was in our top 3 for requests for help out of the 15,000 requests that we got last year. And that was because of the many laws that were changing as it relates to LGBTQI plus individuals last year. So
Right.
we do assist individuals in the US and in Canada who need to move from different states for support.
And you mentioned 15,000 requests. I was gonna ask, what is the what's Rainbow Railroad's impact by numbers that are able, if you could share some of that.
I should know this. We just launched our annual report. So, last year we got 15,000 requests for help. And I want to say close to 5,000 of those cases were helped in some way, shape, or form. And we're still going through cases. And the welcome core numbers aren't included in that number.
Okay. This is just really, I'm kind of, I had questions and things like that, but then I was like, this is a whole different area because I just didn't know all of what you do. And to hear, I did make that connection with the refugee resettlement from my past work, but to hear how it functions, given the unique profile, is not just mind-boggling. That's not the word. It's heart-wrenching. It's absolutely heart-wrenching. Let's see. Pastor Young says, in this election year, we're all very afraid. But what are specific challenges you see in the future of global asylum seeking and for LGBTQI plus individuals?
Let me answer this question as Kendra and not as the senior engagement officer at Rainbow Railroad.
That is absolutely fair.
I want to say when I left Jamaica in 2017. I submitted my asylum case. It should have been processed within that year of me submitting that application. However, presidencies change. And so here I am 8 years later, and my case is still pending. If that's anything to take away from what can happen, if that's the case, we have a right to be afraid. As LGBTQI plus individuals and asylum seekers, it is going to get extremely scary for us. Now that this past couple of weeks, the Biden administration has clamped down on asylum seekers at the border, we have seen a dramatic increase in the applications that Rainbow Railroad has received so far. And if that's anything to say, we are going to have a very busy end of year as it relates to requests for help. And we don't know what will happen. And it is very scary. I myself am afraid because in the event that my case still isn't called and we change presidencies again, I want to say there is a high chance that I might get sent back to Jamaica. So if that's anything, then many of us as asylum seekers are afraid. And persons that haven't even left their countries to come here are afraid as well. So that's all I can say about that.
Yes. Thank you. And we have another question. Healthcare and cultural competencies is important for Africana women impacted impacted by female genital mutilation. Is this a presenting issue for the population you serve?
So many of the requests for help, we do see some form of FGM happening. For Welcome Core, that's not a part of it. We haven't gotten any of those cases at the moment. But as Rainbow Railroad, we do ensure that if this is a part of the case for the individual, we do ensure that we get them to organizations here in the US that assist with those issues. We have great partnerships with organizations across the United States, healthcare-wise. So we do have those conversations with the organization, and we do have a key individual that either is a part of the LGBTQI plus population or is competent to work with the population to understand the needs of individuals that we are referring to them. And I feel like that's something that we stand on as it relates to referring persons for health care that may have gone through some trauma as it relates to genital mutilation. I hope that answers the question.
I mean, I think so. If they have additional, want to expound, you can make a comment. Okay. So we're in June for the most part, July now. What's the primary, does the resettlement process, is it an ongoing process throughout the year? Okay, I was gonna say, or is
Yes.
it like seasons? And I know there were like major cuts under previous administration. Have they increased those numbers anymore?
The
Have you
numbers were
looked?
increased since the previous administration, and they are striving to get to that. This year, they want to relocate 100,000 refugees.
Okay,
We're not really close, but we're working on it.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
working on it.
What kinds of ways can faith communities and society at large engage and also advocating for more resettlements or engagement in other countries?
That's sort of tricky to answer because other countries have different laws, and it's more complex in certain areas. Also in other countries, religion and it plays a higher role than other factors in the country. I feel like if we're going to be preaching love, then preach unconditional love. Love. Open the doors, open your arms to all individuals. Because at the end of the day, we're all people. It doesn't matter who I love or who I'm with. We still have blood in our veins. We're still human beings. I feel like the moment we are able to look away from the fact that I might love a woman or my brother might love a man, that we're just human beings. I feel like as a church, if we're able to practice what we preach, which is love, we'll be able to, one, see the population of the church grow some more, because that's something that I don't think the church realizes, that the population is dwindling and more young people are walking away because of who we are as young people. We're not able to see what you are preaching anymore, So I feel like as a church, if we're able to just practice what we preach, which is love, you will help not just as a church, but you'll help the LGBTQI plus and other populations to feel a sense of belonging.
Question. Kendra, personally and practically, what makes a church congregation a safe place for you? A place where you can let your guard down and return to what you loved about faith in God and the faith in community and faith community.
For me, it would be that if my partner and I walk into the church, you don't automatically assume that my partner is my sister. It's also knowing that I can still love God and still love my partner, and I'm not being condemned for that. The fact that I shouldn't have to choose God or my partner or my family or my partner. And I feel like back in Jamaica, that was the option. And I've been to churches here in the US. I tried again. But I'd prefer to be in a Black church, honestly, because I feel like I'd prefer to be around people that look like me. And I've never had that sense of welcome in the ones I've visited here.
How far in Virginia do you live?
I live in Hampton.
Oh, is that real far from DC?
It's like 3 hours.
Oh, sorry. Because I was gonna say, come to Covenant.
Well, the next time I'm in DC, I will for sure come to Covenant.
And there are others as well, but you know, I'm evangelizing for the church and for us. So any other questions? I mean, this has been, I think it's been it's a good conversation, but like I said, I think many of us, and I should speak for myself, are just kind of when I start like my eyes roll up in my head as I'm thinking and processing. Now I asked about advocacy. How could Covenant partner with you all, and based on the things that you've heard us say, and I know you don't know much about us. I'll ask that question of you, and then Reverend Dunson, I'll ask the question of you as a person who's engaged in congregations and churches, not just with the Alliance, but with Covenant, with our partnership with the Proctor Institute and things like that. What kind of ideas do you have to suggest, offer in a way of bridging this partnership and relationship that could elevate the mission and focus of Rainbow Railroad?
If you and 4 other people can welcome one refugee, I promise I will be your guide. So I will be your person. I will walk you through the process. You don't have to do, we'll finance it because that's what we do as Rainbow Railroad. But if you all welcome a refugee, I think that's the beginning of a perfect partnership. Because if you all at the head can do it, then I'm sure other members of the congregation would want to do that. I think that would be a good start. And it's 90 days. It's not 24 hours, 7 days a week for 90 days. It's more of 3 hours a day for the first month, and then it dwindles down to the end of it. But I think if, as a church, you all decide to sponsor one refugee, that would be great. And I think I have the perfect refugee for you all too.
I have one question to follow up, just because, again, understanding what's sponsorship, because I have a particular understanding of what that looked like before. Although it might be different. So people are coming from all over the world based on various conflicts, right?
Yeah.
And you deal with, your community is the LGBTQI community. So they can come from everywhere. They may not necessarily be people of African descent.
Well, the good
Or
thing is
that-
with Welcome Corps is you can choose the area where
Okay.
you would want the person to be from. We've relocated someone from Cameroon,
Yeah.
Nigeria. We have persons from the Caribbean that are pending to come through.
But I'm saying Rainbow Railroad deals with
The LGBTQI plus
the community.
population
Exactly.
all over the world.
Okay, that's just something to still understand, because even in our relationships and understanding of other congregations, if we're sharing this story, that should be something everybody understands as well. I mean, because they may have some preferences one way or the other, maybe not. Reverend Dunson.
I'm sorry, Reverend Alexander. I started thinking about something. Could you rephrase your question for me, please?
Oh, I was
Come back
asking
to what I was
about, did you have ideas, thoughts, proposals for ways that, just as a denominational leader, a clergy person in the country, what is any ideas that you have about ways to help leverage, elevate the voice, not just through an Alliance of Baptists, but as a national head, of an ecumenical world?
Well, I think my first thought is that with the connections that I have, not just within the Alliance, but for instance, with AWAB, BJC, I mean, just all of these different organizations, I believe that if there is some communication, if we get to talking, just talking about it, we're all actually very connected, and we're all very connected. I'll just say that we're all very connected, even though we may have different missions. I think if folks knew about this, I believe that there would be a great space opened up where churches would be willing to do this. One of the things about the Alliance, there are congregations that are connected to specific areas. So we have a congregation that is connected to Cuba. We have one that's connected to Brazil. We have one that is connected to Uganda. And these churches support and partner with other churches in those areas. So I lost your question because I started to think, and Kendra, I'm going to ask you this because it was something I was thinking about. When people request help, is there any, does it matter if they are, let's say, if they're Catholic, are they looking for a Catholic congregation, or if they're, they're just looking for anyone who is willing to help? Then I think that there is a great opportunity for several of the organizations, including the Alliance, to partner with you and see what we can do to help. And I think that would be awesome. And I'm excited about it because our lives are at stake. And this, for me, this is so eye-opening for me because, and I'm saddened to say that it's not something I knew about. This is a population of people that I didn't know anything about. And so I think that and I'm sure that there are others who are just like me. So I'm actually grateful that we're able to have this conversation and you're able to be here and educate us. But I am more than willing, and we'll connect. I'll get you, make sure you got my information. We will connect, and you just let me know how we can help, and I'll start to get the word out among my network.
Thank you.
Hopefully that will be of some help.
Thank you so much. We have.
But can I say one other thing? The other thing that has got to happen is the church has got to get off of this homophobic platform that they are on. Not just the Black church, but churches. We have too much at stake, just as humanity, for there to be the divides that exist for the reasons in which they exist. We talk about love, we preach about love. We've got to be love. We've got to show love. We've got to be, as our former pastor would say, Pastor Christine would say, you got to be Jesus with skin on. And when people take the Bible and begin to create their own ideology from it, it is detrimental for everybody, because that's the stuff that is spreading and has us in the place that it does. And one of the things that I often talk about is being in a brave space. It's a safe space is a great space to be in. But as clergy, as churches, we've got to be able to create some brave spaces for people where they can come and know that no matter what they what their ideology is, what their theology is, what their sexuality is, that it's not just a safe space, but it's a brave space for you to be in. And so I'm going to be quiet.
I think that we do have some contacts though that could offer a platform for the education and information that then starts things to move with ready-made communities that who are probably just as surprised about this being a resource, an opportunity. Also wanted to let our audience know that the link to Rainbow Railroad's resources can be found on our YouTube and Facebook platforms. And you could also actually access it, their website, which lists a variety of things and videos and various things that are very, very helpful. I was gonna say, I hadn't figured this out, but I just thought there was a link. It would have been nice if I could have linked one of your smaller videos to this, but we did not think about doing that. That would have, because they have like about a 2-minute video, but you've been really, really, I just think that you've really opened our eyes to an amazing work. You're doing, it's like in understanding and knowing, as we say, God did not leave any of us or stop loving us. It's those who walking around, like I said, embarrassing God, saying God said and God did, and that's not the case. So, do we have any other questions?
Can I just throw one thing out? Really?
Uh-oh. Yeah, we did share that Reverend Dunson, and she has definitely probably exceeded her talking limit. So she's still trying, and I know she's been really interested in this conversation. And I'm going to give her a chance to get back on.
All right, I'm going to say this real quick. Pastor Young is doing some great things with the UCC and within the Southeast community. So he may say something about it, but I know that his connections extend far and wide. I'm putting you on the spot, Pastor Young.
Yes, the denominator, as far as the church, like I said, there is the ready-made, and I don't know if this has been a partners that you all have had. When you mentioned this with the State Department, at one point, I believe it was something like 7 or 9 organizations that were State Department contracting entities for the refugee resettlement program. Not anybody could go through the State Department. The State Department has its partners, and then those partners also serving some capacities to do this resettlement. And Rainbow Railroad now is one of those entities, and that doesn't happen often. That's a big thing right there. That's huge. To have met all the criteria and so forth to be one of these very few organizations that have that relationship and is the liaison between the State Department and the larger citizenry to do this kind of resettlement. But there are some other partners that I think that I am aware of, also, that would probably get some good partners that may or may not know about what you guys are doing. So there can be some further conversations. So this has been really rewarding. I have learned a whole lot, and I so hope that others are not just scratching our heads, but thinking, what do we do now? And that's always our the gospel message, and our role is to be challenged in our comfort. And the question is always what the thing that went around forever is this whole, what would Jesus do? Well, Jesus is saying, what would you do? In reflection upon an issue that has been presented, and in our full manifestations of trying to be good disciples, what is our call? What is our responsibility? What do we do from here? And I'm going to challenge us all to ask that question, to continue to learn more. And prayer does make an impact and difference. We're going to pray for those who are seeking refugee and asylum status, as well as Rainbow Railroad and the work that they are doing. And for our friend Kendra, you might be 3 hours away, but we got you now. We actually online. And so we do, we are, we're a quirky bunch, but we do our best to try to love God and do what we believe God has called us to do, and reflect God's kinship here on earth as it is in heaven, in doing our part to make the place better than it was when we came. Do either of you have any other final words? And if not, I will hand it over to Pastor to make comments, or should I go to Robin? One of them will let me know. Dr. I'm not can't even say people's names. Apparatio.
Thank you so much.
Kendra, do you have any other comments before we? Okay.
Wonderful afternoon, wonderful presentations. And like many of you, I had never even heard of the refugees issue, the queer refugee issue. So important, so powerful. And yes, we are definitely trying to adopt you, Sister Kendra. We are online. But thank you so much. It has been powerful. I will turn it over to Pastor. He has some remarks he would like to share, and then we will close it out. So, Pastor.
Yeah, thank you. My heart is really just so full. It's been a wonderful, incredible day of learning and growing, and particularly with this afternoon. Thank you so much to these prophetic voices that we've heard today. We are all of us here at Covenant. We know the awesomeness of Reverend Lisa and Reverend Andrea, but it's been particularly a blessing to hear from Sister Frith, Sister Kendra. We're inspired greatly by your words and your work, and for sharing your testimony, your experiences as well. As I said this morning, I first heard of Rainbow Railroad a few months ago through a presentation that I attended that was led by, I guess, Kendra, he's your boss, Kamali Powell, the CEO of Rainbow Railroad. And so I'm so glad that ChristAfrican Institute has been able to curate this conversation between our history and our thoughts and our ethos and our theology, and that of Rainbow Railroad. And as I said to Kamali then, he had told me how, I was shocked that there is no African American congregation that is joining with you for whatever reason, but we would like to be a community of care. Kendra, so send me all the paperwork, send us all the paperwork we need to become a community of care. It's my intention to add Rainbow Railroad to our missions budget. Probably not this year, but certainly next year. And to have conversations with the church about how can we foster a community of care to refugees. Um, in my previous ministry, I have to say this: my previous pastorate, I pastored in Scotland for a while, and one of my work. Part of my work was being CEO of a refugee project, a community cafe, church-based community cafe that is still going strong there. They get about 100 people in there a week, and give them all the services that they need to start out afresh after the long, difficult, painful road, traumatic road of seeking asylum and going across the waters on boats and all of that. It was one of the most fulfilling works of ministry that I have done in my career. And so I cherish that work greatly. And so I'm so excited now that this way has been opened for us through this conversation, and that we can be able to talk of doing something of that nature for Rainbow Railroad. And I've also been talking to other Black affirming pastors about Rainbow Railroad as well, because Kamali just he got all up in my skin about this work. Got me so excited and hopeful about this. So I've talked to a few pastors, and I'm burning to set up a meeting with them and you, and perhaps to even make it a national pastoral call if we can do something like that. And another thing, you were talking about Whitman Walker as a partner that's right up the street from us, the new Whitman Walker complex at St. Elizabeth. And another thing about our church is that the Max Robinson Center, that is part of Whitman Walker now, what was in the early days of its history, it was based inside Covenant. Based inside of our church through the ministry of our esteemed predecessors, Pastors Emeriti Wiley, and so it seems to be really a sheer serendipity or something, the grace of God, whatever you want to call it, that we are in conversation and think about being in community with you as Whitman Walker is, and so forth. So I'm determined to make this happen. So you will be hearing from me very soon. But thank you again, Sister Kendra, and as well to all of our other speakers this morning, Dr. Canon Tutu Van Firth, Melissa McQueen Smith, and of course, Reverends Lisa and Andrea, Dr. Robin Aparicio, and of course to all of the background team, those who've been pulling the strings, making sure the Zoom bombers or whoever might have infiltrated this space. They made sure that they stayed away. So we thank them so much, so that we could hear these wonderful conversations on today. But I'm so excited after this conversation, and I'm wanting and longing to be in conversation with Rainbow Railroad very soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor.
May,
Thank you
may I-
again.
may I add, perhaps a shout out to Reverend Lakeisha.
Mhm.
And she is, I'm not sure where she is. I know she's on the mother continent, but just to be able to pull this together and pull us together and not be present. Hopefully we have done her proud. So I just wanted to give a shout out to her real quick.
Absolutely. And so we are at the end of our conference, and I will ask that our signs be put back up. We are asking people to sow a seed into our Christ, our caddy. We are asking people to give an offering. We offer this every year for free. But we certainly would encourage people to partner with us. You can use this QR code, which is up, and decide to plant a seed and see how we will grow and how we will spread our leaves to continue to spread love in the world. As you can hear today, there are issues, but we are ready and equipped for it. And all we have to do is, as Pastor said, is say yes and open the door. We invite you for service tomorrow as we give our conference a full-time close, 10 a.m. Come for an uplifting service led by our guest speaker, Reverend Raquel Gill. It's the perfect way to wrap up our time together. So we invite you to come to service, watch us virtually, and special thanks again to all of our speakers and presenters today, all of those, as Pastor has said, who are working behind the scenes. All of those links will be found on our Caddy Facebook page. So we invite you to go there. And I believe that that's it for the rest of the day. Thank you so much for coming, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a blessed rest of the day. Take care.